The first time it happened, I didn't know it would change everything. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, scrolling absent-mindedly through my phone, when Sarah, my crush, the girl who made my heart skip a beat every time she smiled, sent me a message that would haunt me for weeks. "Honestly, I think you'd look cute in a dress," she typed, a little winking emoji tacked on at the end. I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure whether to laugh it off or reply seriously. "Me? In a dress?" The thought was both terrifying and thrilling. I had never thought of myself this way before, never considered the idea that someone I liked could see me differently. My mind raced with images I had never dared to imagine, soft fabrics brushing against my skin, a delicate dress hugging my frame, the curious, approving glance of Sarah. I pushed the thought aside, telling myself it was a joke, just a silly comment. But that night, alone in my room, I couldn't shake the image. I stood in front of my mirror, my reflection staring back at me, plain, nervous, unsure. And then, almost on impulse, I reached for my sister's old dress tucked in the back of my closet. It was simple, floral, and slightly too small, but it smelled faintly of lavender and memories. Sliding it on felt like stepping into a different world. The fabric clung to my shoulders, flowing softly down my sides, and I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. For the first time, I felt different. Lighter. Vulnerable, yes, but also alive in a way I had never felt before. My heart raced, a mixture of fear and excitement pulsing through me. I almost laughed at how ridiculous I must have looked, but at the same time, I didn't want to take it off. I remembered Sarah's words again. "You'd look cute." Cute. That single word had lodged itself into my mind like a tiny spark, igniting a curiosity I couldn't ignore. Could I really pull this off? Would it make me feel seen? Desired? I didn't know, but I wanted to find out. I had always been careful about appearances, about the life I presented to the world. At school, I was just Ryan, the quiet, slightly awkward guy who kept himself, studied hard, and occasionally hung out with friends in a predictable pattern. No one would expect me to do something like this, and maybe that was the appeal. It wasn't about rebellion or secrecy alone. It was about discovering a side of myself that had been dormant, hidden beneath layers of routine and expectation. The first night I wore the dress, I practiced small gestures in the mirror, how to hold my hands, the sway of my hips, the tilt of my chin. I even tried a little makeup, smudging on a thin layer of foundation my sister had left behind. The mirror reflected not just my face, but a new persona, one that was bold, soft, and undeniably feminine. I felt a thrill, but also a twinge of anxiety. What if someone found out? What if I couldn't go back to being the person I was before? But I couldn't stop smiling. The reflection staring back at me was intriguing, magnetic, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly curious about myself. Sarah's words weren't just teasing anymore. They were a challenge. And I was ready to accept it. Over the next few days, my thoughts kept returning to that night. I experimented in secret, trying different dresses, adjusting hairstyles, and carefully dabbling in makeup. Each time, I felt a growing sense of liberation, an unspoken confidence blooming inside me. It wasn't just about impressing Sarah anymore. It was about exploring who I could be when no one was watching, about discovering a version of myself that existed only in these private moments. I became meticulous. I took notes on fabrics, textures, and the way colors complemented my skin tone. I practiced walking gracefully in the heels I borrowed from my sister, learning to balance elegance with a slight wobble that reminded me I was still learning. Each transformation was both thrilling and terrifying, an adrenaline rush that left me breathless and flushed. Yet, with every step deeper into this secret world, a shadow of doubt lingered. What would people think if they discovered me like this? Could I ever show Sarah, or anyone, what I had become? And more importantly, could I reconcile this newfound part of myself with the life I had always known? By the time Sarah messaged me again, asking casually about a weekend hangout, I had already made a decision. I wasn't just going to imagine myself in a dress. I was going to live it. I would take the leap, step into this new identity, and see where it led. And when the weekend arrived, my heart pounded not just from anticipation of seeing her, but from the thrill of embracing the side of me I could no longer ignore. The stage was set, the secret growing stronger by the day, and I realized with a mixture of fear and excitement that this was only the beginning. My crush's playful comment had unlocked something inside me, a world I could no longer resist. Dresses, lipstick, and soft fabrics weren't just curiosities, they were becoming necessities, extensions of a self I had long kept hidden. And as I stood there, one hand brushing against the hem of my favorite floral dress, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. There was no turning back. The weekend finally arrived, bringing with it a strange mix of excitement and anxiety. I had spent the last few days obsessively planning every detail: the dress I would wear, the way I would style my hair, even the subtle hints of eyeliner I dared to try for the first time. Each element of the outfit was a calculated choice, a careful construction of an identity that I was beginning to embrace as fully my own. Saturday morning, I woke early. My chest tightened as I opened my closet, fingers grazing the soft fabrics I had experimented with all week. I finally settled on a light blue dress with delicate lace at the collar and a flowing skirt that promised both elegance and comfort. I slipped it over my head, the cool material brushing my skin like a whisper. I paired it with beige heels, slightly too tall for my comfort, but the very challenge of walking in them thrilled me. I caught my reflection in the mirror. My heart raced. The reflection staring back wasn't entirely me, but it wasn't entirely a stranger either. It was a version of me I had long kept hidden, fragile, daring, and undeniably captivating. I adjusted the wig, a soft chestnut color that framed my face perfectly, and applied a touch of lip gloss, watching the subtle shine transform my expression. Each small detail intensified the emotional complexity swirling inside me. There was exhilaration, yes, but also fear. Fear that someone would see me like this. Fear that my crush, or worse, someone I knew, would judge me. And yet, there was an undeniable thrill in knowing that I was stepping into a world I had never dared to explore. By the time I arrived at the park where Sarah was waiting, my palms were sweaty, my stomach knotted. She was already there, leaning casually against a tree, her hair glinting in the morning sun. She looked up and smiled the moment she saw me, and my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. "Wow," she said softly, taking a step closer. You actually did it." I forced a small smile, trying to appear casual. "Yeah, I thought I'd give it a shot." My voice sounded strange even to me, lighter, slightly higher than usual, betraying my nerves. Sarah tilted her head, examining me with a curious, approving gaze. "You look really cute." Her words hit me like a jolt of electricity, sending a shiver down my spine. I felt exposed, yet deeply seen, every nerve alive with sensation. We walked together through the park, the soft brush of my dress against my legs a constant reminder of how different this felt. Children played nearby, couples strolled hand in hand, and yet all I could focus on was the delicate balance between fear and exhilaration. Each step in my heels was a small victory, a proof that I could inhabit this new identity with grace, even if my heart pounded like a drum. As the afternoon progressed, I noticed how differently people treated me. A few strangers smiled warmly, complimenting my outfit, while others barely registered my presence. The reactions were a mix of acceptance, curiosity, and indifference, a spectrum that mirrored my own conflicting emotions. Every glance felt loaded with meaning, and I couldn't help but analyze each one for signs of approval or judgment. By the time we reached a quiet cafe, my confidence had grown, but so had my anxiety. I realized how vulnerable I was sitting here as a version of myself that only a handful of people had seen. Sarah chatted animatedly about school, friends, and weekend plans, and I laughed along, but my mind constantly returned to the mirror, the dress, and the thrilling sensation of inhabiting this new persona. At one point, she reached across the table, brushing her fingers lightly against mine. "Honestly," she said, voice soft, "I'm glad you tried this. You seem different. Happier, maybe? Her words struck me deeper than I expected. I hadn't realized that part of me, this version of me, was not just an experiment, but a form of release, a way to explore feelings and aspects of my personality I had long suppressed. I smiled, uncertain whether to admit it or stay silent, and she only squeezed my hand gently, letting the moment linger. Returning home later that day, I felt an intoxicating mix of satisfaction and fear. I had survived being seen and even admired in a dress, and yet the experience left me more aware of how fragile this newfound identity was. My room became a sanctuary once more, a place where I could fully inhabit the persona I had created without fear of interruption. I began experimenting more boldly, trying different dresses, styles, and accessories. Each transformation brought with it a new set of emotions: delight at the way the clothes hugged my form, nervousness at the sound of a passerby outside my window, and the almost dizzying thrill of seeing myself reflected in a mirror, fully alive in a way I had never experienced. It wasn't just about clothes or appearance. It was about control, expression, and the secret thrill of inhabiting a space where I could define myself entirely. I learned to balance elegance with caution, beauty with subtlety, creating a persona that was compelling, alluring, and utterly mine. Yet, with each experiment, the tension grew. Every knock on the door, every unexpected text, every shadow outside my window became a potential threat. What if Sarah showed up unannounced? What if a neighbor saw me changing? What if my parents or someone from school discovered the truth? The stakes felt higher with every passing day, a thrilling but dangerous game that demanded constant vigilance. Then came the first near miss. One evening, while adjusting a particularly daring outfit in my room, I heard the unmistakable sound of the front door opening. Panic surged through me. I scrambled to cover myself, my heart hammering, as footsteps approached. I held my breath, frozen, listening as the sounds drew closer, but then, mercifully, a familiar voice called out, "Ryan, are you in here?" It was Sarah, stopping just outside my door. My body relaxed slightly, but only slightly. The tension was far from gone. I opened the door, cheeks flushed, and she grinned. "You look amazing," she said simply, stepping inside. I had to see for myself. In that moment, I realized the thrill of being seen, the vulnerability and excitement, was becoming addictive. The secret wasn't just a game anymore. It was a part of me, a dimension of identity I couldn't ignore. And as Sarah's gaze lingered, warm and approving, I understood that this was just the beginning. The dresses, the makeup, the careful balance between exposure and concealment, they weren't temporary experiments. They were a path I was already walking, a journey into a side of myself that could no longer be suppressed. And yet, the danger remained. Each day brought new risks, new challenges, and the tantalizing possibility that my secret could be discovered at any moment. The thrill was addictive, but so was the fear, a duality that kept me on edge, heart racing, and mind alert. By the end of the week, I was wearing dresses almost daily, slipping into skirts and heels whenever I was alone. The sensation of fabric brushing my legs, the subtle scent of perfume, the shimmer of lip gloss in the mirror, it all became part of my new routine, an intimate ritual of discovery and thrill. And with every passing day, the suspense grew. Every glance from Sarah, every message, every unexpected interruption became a test of courage, identity, and secrecy. I had no idea where this path would lead, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stop now. The thrill of the secret, the allure of transformation, and the subtle, electric joy of being seen in a dress had taken hold, and I realized, with equal parts fear and exhilaration, that my life had changed forever. The next week was a whirlwind of excitement and anxiety. Each day, I found myself drawn deeper into this new world I had begun to inhabit. Dresses, heels, and subtle makeup weren't just occasional experiments anymore. They were becoming a second skin, a secret identity I wore with equal parts thrill and fear. Every reflection in the mirror reminded me of how drastically my life had changed in just a few short days. It all came to a head one evening when Sarah invited me to a small gathering at her apartment. It was casual, just a few friends, but the thought of being seen by people outside our usual circle set my nerves on edge. I had never worn a dress in public like this before, and the stakes felt impossibly high. I chose a soft pink dress, knee-length with a flared skirt that twirled effortlessly when I moved. The heels were slightly taller than I'd ever attempted, forcing me to walk carefully, each step deliberate. I applied makeup with precision, accentuating my eyes and lips without overdoing it. Each brush stroke, each shimmer of gloss, heightened both my excitement and my anxiety. When I arrived, Sarah greeted me with a radiant smile. "You look incredible," she whispered, her eyes sparkling. I felt my cheeks flush as she held the door open for me. My heart pounded, not just from the attention, but from the awareness that every step I took in this dress was an act of vulnerability. The apartment was buzzing with conversation, laughter, and music. I tried to blend in, keeping my movements graceful, heels clicking softly against the floor. But the thrill of visibility, of being fully seen in this new persona, made every gesture feel charged with emotion. I felt exposed, yet powerful in a way I hadn't imagined. Then came the first obstacle, a surprise visit from Sarah's older brother, Marcus, who had a reputation for teasing anyone who seemed out of place. He arrived just as I was laughing at a joke Sarah had made. His eyes swept across the room and landed on me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Well, he said, his tone playful but sharp. "I didn't expect to see you dressed like that." He raised an eyebrow, clearly sizing me up. My heart raced. I wanted to shrink, to disappear, but Sarah reached for my hand, grounding me. "It's fine, Marcus," she said lightly, a protective edge in her voice. "He looks amazing, doesn't he?" Marcus smirked, clearly amused, but he didn't push further, for now. I exhaled slowly, relief mingling with a lingering sense of vulnerability. This was the tension I had been building toward, the fear of exposure, the risk of judgment, and the thrill of proving to myself that I could handle it. As the evening progressed, the stakes grew higher. A friend, Alex, leaned closer, complimenting my outfit and asking questions about my makeup routine. Each compliment was a double-edged sword, validation mixed with the ever-present fear that someone might suspect more than they should. Then came the real twist. Midway through the night, I heard a knock at the door. Sarah excused herself to answer, and my pulse spiked. I knew that sound too well. It was the kind of interruption that could shatter my carefully maintained facade. A moment later, Sarah returned, her expression unreadable. "It's my mom," she said quietly. "She stopped by early. You, might want to hide for a moment." Panic surged through me. I had never imagined being caught like this, dressed fully, heels and makeup in place. My mind raced as I considered hiding behind the couch, darting into the bathroom, or even fleeing out the back door. Each option carried risk, and the tension coiled tighter around my chest. I chose to retreat into the kitchen, hoping Sarah could distract her mother long enough for me to change, or at least conceal myself. I pressed myself against the counter, ears straining to hear every word. Sarah's mother's voice was cheerful, oblivious at first, asking about her daughter's friends, commenting on the music, laughing at jokes. But then I heard it, a pause, a slight intake of breath, followed by a curious, almost suspicious question. "And who's this?" I froze. My mind screamed, "Do something." My reflection in the polished countertop caught my eye, and for a moment, I saw two versions of myself, the nervous, vulnerable teenager in a pink dress and the daring, confident persona I had been cultivating. Both were real, both dependent on the next few seconds to survive. Suddenly, Sarah emerged from the living room, her voice smooth and playful. "Mom, this is just Alex. Well, he's a friend." She glanced at me, giving the faintest nod, signaling me to stay calm. I held my breath, heart hammering, as her mother's gaze lingered. Every second stretched into an eternity. Then, mercifully, she smiled.
"Oh,
Well, it's lovely to meet you, Alex. You look, so put together. Relief flooded me, but the tension didn't fully lift. I knew that one misstep could unravel everything. The wrong word, a misplaced gesture, a fallen heel. The stakes were sky high, and the exhilaration was addictive. As the evening wore on, the emotional intensity only increased. I navigated conversations, laughter, and occasional glances from Sarah's mother, each interaction a delicate dance between exposure and concealment. I felt my confidence surge with every successful interaction, but the fear of discovery never fully dissipated. Then, as if testing me further, Marcus leaned close again, a mischievous grin on his face. "You're really committing to this, huh?" he teased. "I didn't think you had it in you." I felt a flush of embarrassment, but also a surge of pride. Yes, I had committed. Yes, I had risked everything for this moment of transformation. And yes, I was thriving in a way I had never imagined. The night climaxed in a symbolic moment. A glass of juice spilled, my heel catching the edge of the carpet, sending me teetering dangerously. I caught myself just in time, heart racing, cheeks flushed. Everyone laughed lightly, thinking it was a small stumble, but I knew it symbolized the precarious balance of my new identity. One misstep could expose everything. By the time the gathering ended, I was both exhilarated and exhausted. I had navigated fear, temptation, and exposure, emerging not unscathed but stronger, more aware of my dual life, and more addicted to the thrill of transformation. Walking home with Sarah that night, hand in hand, I realized that this was only the beginning. The dresses, the makeup, the stolen moments of visibility, they weren't just a secret anymore. They were a defining part of me, thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. And as I lay in bed that night, heels set carefully by the door, dress folded neatly, reflection lingering in my mind, I knew that the next challenge was always just around the corner. Someone could discover me at any moment, the thrill and fear coiling tighter with each passing day. But I was ready, hungry even, for the next encounter, the next test, the next moment where I could fully embrace this version of myself. The suspense, the tension, the exhilaration, they were addictive, and I knew I could never go back to the way things were before. The next morning, I woke with the lingering thrill of the previous night still coursing through me. My reflection in the mirror was almost mesmerizing, a reminder of how much I had changed in such a short time. The pink dress and heels had been carefully folded away, the makeup bag tucked neatly back in the drawer, yet the memory of walking confidently among Sarah's friends and surviving the scrutiny left me both elated and anxious. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "You were amazing last night, smirking face, can't wait to see you again." I smiled, but my excitement was tinged with a subtle unease. Each message from Sarah now carried a hidden weight, not just affection, but expectation. Every word, every invitation could draw me further into this life I was beginning to crave. I didn't have much time to dwell on it before a knock at the door startled me. My heart skipped a beat. It was early, too early for anyone I knew to visit. Cautiously, I peeked through the peephole and froze. It was Emma. Her expression was unreadable, serious, almost calculating. I hadn't expected to see her until later, and certainly not like this, so soon. My mind raced. How much had she seen already? Did she know about my experiments with dresses, the heels, the makeup? Had she pieced it together from the subtle signs I'd left behind, or was this just a casual visit? I debated what to do. Hide, open the door, or stall. Every second stretched endlessly, my pulse hammering in my ears. The reflection of my past self and this new persona collided in my mind, each demanding a different action. Emma knocked again, firmer this time. "Hey, open up," she called. "I need to talk to you." Panic surged. I hadn't planned for this confrontation. Not like this. Not now, in this vulnerable, half-transformed state. I glanced at the neatly folded dress, the makeup bag tucked away, but even with them hidden, I felt exposed. Every instinct screamed that this was the moment of truth, The moment where my secret life might be exposed, my newfound identity challenged. My fingers hovered over the door handle, trembling. Should I open it? Should I pretend everything was normal? My heart and mind were in a fierce tug-of-war. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. A message from Sarah. Be careful, smiling face with horns. Some surprises aren't as fun as you think. I froze, the words echoing ominously in my mind. Sarah always loved teasing, but this felt different. Threatening, almost prophetic. The tension coiled tighter, my chest aching with anticipation and dread. Emma knocked a third time, and this time I could hear her moving closer, footsteps on the floor. Every instinct screamed that I was on the verge of being discovered. I glanced at the mirror one last time, catching the reflection of a nervous, vulnerable boy who had begun to embrace a daring, confident girl. The eyes staring back at me were both familiar and foreign, a perfect reflection of my dual life. And I realized, with a jolt, that nothing would ever be the same. The door handle rattled. Emma's voice, soft but insistent, called my name. And then, before I could respond, the scene froze in my mind. The suspense of discovery, the thrill of transformation, the terrifying uncertainty of what would happen next. Would Emma step in and understand, or would everything unravel in a single, catastrophic moment? Would my secret life as someone daring, confident, and beautiful be revealed, or would I manage to navigate another close call? The answer hung in the air, unresolved, electrifying, and entirely out of my control.